Hey everybody, welcome to the Ghoul Friend Hour. I'm your host Morgan Feza, and today we have a super awesome guest. I have Chris Mckinnell here with me. He is the co-founder of the Warren Legacy Foundation. So Chris, I'm going to pass the torch to you and have you introduce yourself.
Hey, folks. Nice to be here. Morgan, thank you very much for having me on.
Absolutely.
I am the director of the Warren Legacy Foundation for Paranormal Research. We carry on the work of my grandparents, Ed and Lorraine Warren. Most people know them from the movies, Conjuring, Annabelle, The Nun. Those are Hollywood. You're not going to get a good picture of my grandparents from those. Um, but we work all around the world, and the work we do is free, it's confidential. We don't expose our clients to the public ever. I mean, yes, we'll talk about cases, but we will not give any private details. Our job is to help our clients first, educate the public second, and to help minimize their fears. I mean, honestly, when you hear footsteps in the hallway in the middle of the night, it's not the devil, probably. Almost certainly, it's not the devil. It's probably your grandmother, and she's come there to check on you. But your fear has turned a beautiful experience into something terrifying. So we try to help people with that. One of our other goals with the foundation, we always are trying to educate the next generation of researchers. There are just too many crazy people out there with huge egos. All they want is their 2 seconds of something flying across the room so they can show it on YouTube or Instagram, and they don't care about the families. That's not us. We don't bother with that crap. We don't put that online. Um, and finally, we do have a psychic support group available for people who are sensitives, who claim to be in some way psychic. Maybe they're an empath, or they're actually clairvoyant, or a medium, or what have you. And that's a place where they get support, where they learn how to deal with their abilities or their anxiety attacks, um, or maybe even learn how to suppress their abilities if that's their desire. So we have one of those in English and one in Spanish, and we've got about 1,000 members around the world right now. So that was a long-winded introduction, wasn't it?
No, but that was so perfect because it's full of lots of information. And I did not know that you guys had a psychic support group. So, I mean, that's amazing and something I feel like I definitely could have used and may possibly utilize because
I'll send you the link.
yeah, no, I mean, that's amazing. So, I just want to, so basically I kind of created a little list of questions for myself.
Mhm.
Just kind of wondering, where your spiritual journey really started. I guess we'll start there.
Oh, wow. You're gonna, this is gonna take a little while. Um, my grandmother was definitely a devout Catholic, and I became aware at an extremely early age that my grandparents were into some very strange things. I was actually locked in the museum when I was about 3 or 4 years old
Oh,
at night.
oh my goodness.
Yeah, which probably is the reason I was afraid of the dark until I was 16. Um,
It's all right. You're not alone because I'm 28. I'm still afraid of the dark.
we can talk about that as well. Honestly, the best way to deal with that is to actually immerse yourself in your fears,
Okay.
which I had to for my work. And I've never been afraid of the dark since that one night when I was 16. But by the time I was maybe 12, I kind of realized catechism and Catholicism were not for me. Uh, we moved, and the Mormons came to the door. And I was like, yeah, come on in, let's talk. So I started studying with them for about 6 months. Then the Jehovah Witnesses came. I was like, yeah, come on in. So I ended up going
That's
with them
awesome.
and doing Bible studies and going to these big meetings. And I admire both of those religions, their sense of family, their sense of community, and the way they support one another is beautiful. But it wasn't for me. Um, then it was Zen Buddhism. Then I went to college, and the head of my school, my first school, was a philosophy professor. So, I took all of his courses on philosophy of religion, and we spent a long time talking to one another, one on one. It was extraordinary. Um, Afterward, I really delved into the origins of the Bible and studied with three different experts in college. One was a theologian, he was actually a clergyman. Another was a historian and philosophy professor, and the other one was a literature professor. And that fascinated me. I really delved into that deeply. Um, and again, decided this wasn't for me. Then I got lucky. I went in the Peace Corps and I went to Mali, which was at the time the poorest country in the world. And it was a
Right.
Muslim country.
Wow.
And the most welcoming, kindest, generous people in the poorest country you could imagine. I'd enter a village, um, and they would immediately first offer water. They always offer water. And then they'd offer you chickens, two
Really?
chickens. And they didn't eat one chicken a year. So this was like a huge sacrifice for them.
Yeah, that's a big welcome.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And I got to participate in some of their rituals. I also started learning about animism, which is an African based religion based on nature and the
Okay.
powers of nature, which was fascinating to me. I went to Jerusalem, studied there. I got to
How was
spend,
Jerusalem?
well, I was there during the Second Palestinian Uprising.
Oh boy. Okay,
It
yeah. So,
wasn't terrific. It was fascinating.
okay.
Um, but for instance, one incident, I was along the old wall of the old city, and I was traveling with this Hebrew guy from, oh, where was it? Sudan, I think the Sudan. No, Libya. He was from Libya, and he was screaming and yelling at these Palestinians on top of the wall. All of a sudden, we're getting stoned. Yeah,
Oh my goodness.
and I was also with this poor English guy, uh, and he's like hopping right in the middle of all these stones. He's not even getting out of the way. So I run out, I grab him, and I pull him against the wall so that they can't keep stoning us.
Oh my God.
Um, so that was an experience. After that, I spent several months in Egypt studying the ancient religions there. Um, Spent a long time in Nepal, 2 years in Thailand, 6 months in South Korea.
Oh my
Uh,
gosh.
and I got to work. I have friends in Portugal who are Umbanda priests and priestesses. And Umbanda is a Afro-Brazilian religion, which is fascinating because the priests and priestesses are all trained mediums, and they channel specific spirits. Each of them has their own specific spirit from one of anywhere between 5 and 7 schools of spirits, depending on the particular day that the congregation is meeting. It might be the old sailors, the old blacks, the defender, whatever it happens to be.
Wow.
Those from the left-hand path, and they will channel that one spirit, and you'll have several priests and priestesses there, and the congregation will go to one or another priest or priestess during the ceremonies and ask their questions, receive spiritual guidance from those spirits. It was fascinating. I
That
really,
sounds
really enjoyed
fascinating.
that.
I
Yeah, that
literally
was amazing.
never heard of that. And like now I'm like, okay, I gotta jot this down and go research it because this is,
Yeah.
I mean, you're opening
Umbanda.
my eyes up.
Umbanda. Umbanda. The other one is Kimbanda. Quimbanda. Kimbanda does rely more on the dark side.
Okay.
This does not mean that it's satanic. It's something that people need to understand. These are separate religions of their own. They have nothing to do with Christianity.
Okay.
And just because another religion wants to demonize it does not mean it's actually evil.
Yeah.
Um,
So when
I
you say like
also,
the dark side of things, so then what does that mean? Because like obviously, I mean, I've never heard of this religion, which so I think I mean, to me, it's very intriguing.
well, in Umbanda, which I know far better, um, the belief is that there are fallen angels or fallen souls who are looking for redemption.
Okay.
And they work with the priests and priestesses to save souls who are lost.
Okay.
And so they're kind of smuggling them out of the darkness to earn their own
Okay.
redemption.
But that's very neat.
Yeah, it is. It's a totally different idea. I mean, I also got to work with Jaguar Negro, which means Black Jaguar.
Okay.
He's the witch mayor of a town called Catemaco in Veracruz, Mexico.
Wow.
There are so many, there are thousands of witches there.
I wish like
And
I could just like crawl inside your brain and like dig through the filing cabinets because like there's so much stuff that you're telling me right now that like, I thought in 28 years I've learned a lot about spirituality and I'm like that was just the tip of the iceberg. I really had no idea.
I'm 58. I got 30 years on you, and I can tell you the one thing I have learned is I know nothing.
I like that. I like that.
Yeah, I mean, I searched, you asked about my spiritual path. So my answer is pretty simple, and I've given this in a million interviews. So for those who might have heard these before, I apologize. But the truth is, I didn't find my faith in any religion. I got to spend 3 days with the Dalai Lama.
Really?
Yeah. And I
Oh,
still could not find my faith.
okay.
It wasn't until I studied quantum physics as well, because for me, that is very important to my own work in the paranormal. But, and I recommend it to anybody, by the way, who wants to study the paranormal, study quantum physics
I never would have thought of that. So I'm gonna
and
have
psychology. Those two are vital.
I got
Um,
psychology down. Quantum physics, I'm gonna have to work on.
the other thing is to have an extraordinarily open mind and do not go in with any particular faith to bias you.
Okay.
Um, Faith is your shield, don't get me wrong. But what I learned in all of my travels is there are many paths up the mountain. And it's only the fool running around the bottom saying you're going the wrong way that never gets any closer to God.
I love that. I love
So NASA said a few years ago that there are more living worlds in the universe than there are grains of sand on Earth.
that. Wow.
Now, that's trillions and trillions of worlds with life of some sort. And once I digested that idea, I realized my search for understanding God was the most egotistical thing I have ever participated in my life. How can I understand that? You know, an amoeba has a better chance of understanding what I'm going to do next week than I do of understanding God. So if you think of God, and I think of God in several ways, I have to. You know, Jesus used allegories to teach, and I find them comforting when I'm trying to picture things. Um, but I think of God as a weaver of beautiful tapestry, which is our universe. And I'm only one itty bitty thread in that infinite tapestry. I have to have faith that I'm being woven in the right direction. Now, I have free will. I can screw that up, you know? But in a universal tapestry, even if I go the wrong way, and he'll try to, push me in the right way. But if I go the wrong way, the tapestry is still going to hold together. It's still going to keep growing. And my contribution can either help or hinder.
That's, I mean, that's a very profound way of looking at it. I like that a lot. I do. And I do love how philosophical you are. Like, I think that your perspective is a breath of fresh air. It's not often that I come across people that have such a profound and beautiful outlook on the way that life is and faith and religion. And I think it's really, really neat. I was not, I guess what I should say is, I was not expecting the answer that you gave me on religion, because I think it's super admirable that you did keep such an open mind and that you tried all these different religions and you learned from these priests and these priestesses. And like, to me, I just think that's so profound.
Most people are born into their religion, and
Yes.
that's who they are. You know, to me, I don't think that's what God wants. And also, sadly, most people don't learn about their own religion. If you ask the average Christian about their beliefs and what's actually in the Bible, they're gonna not really understand, and they're not going to be able to give you the history of the formation of the church and how it changed over time and everything else about it, because there is so much there. There is beautiful wisdom in every single religion, but it boils down very simply to some simple truths that I believe are from God.
Okay.
As you do unto the least of my brothers, so you do unto me.
Okay.
Basically, that's it. Love my neighbor. You know, it isn't about, oh, that person's a different religion, that person doesn't speak my language, that person's from a different color or country or whatever, I can't trust them. That's pathetically narrow-minded and incorrect.
So it's very ignorant.
It is. It is. Honestly, again, going back to the fact that there are that many living worlds in the universe, people often will tell me I'm humble. I'm not at all humble. I'm realistic, because in the eyes of God, I am one tiny itty bitty light that is no different than the light of anyone else. When you look at an ant hill, do any of those ants look different to you? No. You either love them all or not. And I think God loves them all.
I
And
agree.
that's us. We're just lights, little tiny things that He cherishes and hopes the best for. He gave us one gift: free will. This can be heaven or this can be hell. And we are falling down on the job.
Yeah.
Sadly, we have the power to change the world, and we don't believe we do. Sadly, we don't have faith in ourselves.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that heavily.
And I also think, honestly, that fear is the real enemy. It's not the devil.
Fear is a
You
big
know,
one.
yeah, it's fear. Period. That's it. I learned that early in life. It shaped my early life. Fear pulls us apart, and I don't. Look, I'm not being political here. I don't care which country you're in right
Yeah.
now listening to this. Politicians in most countries, regardless of party or philosophy, use fear to pull us apart. The media uses fear to get more ratings.
Yeah.
Everything in the world revolves around making us afraid. We don't need to be afraid. We need to believe in our own power, and we have that power. We can change the world when we believe. But if we don't do it with love in our hearts, then we are moving against the plan of God.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I. It's funny because I literally said to my husband not too long ago, I try not to watch the news. I try to kind of stay away from all the negativity and the stuff that is broadcasted because I just think that it's absolute just pollutants to your mind.
Yeah.
And I feel like, I said to my husband, I'm like, I know this is going to sound funny, but have you ever seen the movie Little Nicky?
Yeah, I have Adam Sandler, but
Yeah.
it's been so many years, and I'm
Yeah.
old.
No, you're not a day over 20. Don't kid
Oh
me.
yeah.
Come on.
Well, my fiance would tell you inside, yeah, I'm not a day over 20.
But I said to him, I said, sometimes I just feel like I'm living in Little Nicky because it's like I feel like the most simple thing to do, but it's like it seems like it's the hardest thing to do is to love. It it takes a lot more energy to be negative and to be hateful and to put that bad energy out into the universe.
Mhm.
And it's like it's so simple to love people, but it seems like it's the hardest thing to do. And like I said to him, I'm like, I look around and I see all these bad things happening. And like, you hear about, I mean, I don't even have an example because there's too many. Like, there's always something just terrible going on. And it doesn't matter if I don't watch the news, it doesn't matter if I try not to look at the news on my phone, it always finds its way somewhere to make it to you. And it's like, I just, I think, like everybody else, you wish you lived in a world where it wasn't like that and people could just love one another. And I understand that in order to have light, that there needs to be some dark. I mean, I get that.
We need that. We really do. The truth
Balance.
is, imagine a world where everything is perfectly wonderful.
Yeah, it would be
We'd
odd.
stay babies. If babies who never have to strive or struggle for any reason, I mean, why would they bother to learn to speak? Why would they bother to learn to walk? Why would they learn anything? We
That's true.
need that. It's yin yang.
Yeah.
Sorry, I speak too much Spanish now. So I'm like yin yang and yin yang in English. Uh,
I totally got the gist though. But I
but
agree.
the, my life has been filled with lots of tragedies, tons. I have had everything taken away from me 3 times. I took into two young homeless people who took advantage of me, stole from me for almost a year, and then when I finally asked them to leave because I'd already lost the lease on my home because of their criminal behavior, um, they beat me. And then a con woman came and convinced me that she could help me and give me a place to stay. And she ended up taking what little I had left.
Yeah.
And you know what? Here's the thing, I wouldn't change one moment of my life. You know, another metaphor for you, if you wish. I think of God like as a blacksmith,
Okay.
and he takes this raw ore, us, and he puts it in the fire, and he bangs the hell out of it to shape us into the tool he needs us to become. Now, many times we break, but then he throws us back in the fire to try to reforge us again.
I like that.
And I've been reforged, and I feel like, thank you, God. I'm grateful for all of the things I've been through, not
Yeah.
just the good, because I needed every single moment,
Yeah.
or I couldn't be here today talking to you.
That's very true. And I love the blacksmith. I think that just puts it in such a good perspective, and it truly does shine a light on how God is constantly molding and making you into who you're supposed to be and directing you towards your purpose. So
Mhm.
um I mean, that's amazing. And I think it's just really, really neat to see how much you have done in life. And we haven't even really gotten to all of it. So I'm sure we would be here for a little while, but it's very neat to hear, these experiences and, hear about that spiritual journey. So I feel like I kind of want to ask you, what were some valuable lessons, because I know that you refer to your grandmother a lot on like the spiritual aspect. What were some spiritual lessons that you feel like your grandmother gave to you and taught you?
My gram, honestly, one of the sweetest, most welcoming, beautiful people ever. Um, you see her in videos, you know, on YouTube and what have you, and you think, oh, how sweet. But I got to be with her and live with her, and you enter the house and it's, oh, honey, would you like a grilled cheese with tomato? I'll go make it for you right now. Would you like cookies? I'll go make them for you right now. Um, she would spend 2 weeks preparing the holidays, whatever holiday it happened to be, 2 weeks, getting all the different foods she was going to make. And always there would be special ones just for me or just for my sister, Um, that, and for instance, you must have experienced this yourself, but most psychics grow up in isolation and they don't have anybody to understand them or accept them. And a few would find their way to her, and she would drop everything to mentor them and be there for them. And I learned empathy and compassion partly from her. I learned ethical behavior. Um, my grandfather and I, we could clash often. Uh, he was more into the media aspect, and he loved that attention. And me, I'm not ego driven at all. I think it's wrong. I think when you've got a huge ego, you're pushing God out of the room, and that's just a shame. Um, my grandmother, on the other hand, would drop anything to help anybody. So would my grandfather. Don't get me wrong. Uh, Actually, one of my grandfathers, one story that's my favorite of my grandfather's. It was wintertime up in Connecticut, and he was driving by and he saw this poor collie wrapped with its, on a chain, wrapped around this frozen tree in a frozen puddle, all covered in mud, in absolute misery. He pulls over the car. He goes over. He unhooks the dog. He goes up to the front door, slams on the door. Guy comes there and he says, "You just lost your dog." And he takes the dog home, named it Duke after John Wayne, his favorite actor,
Love it.
and Duke became part of the family.
Oh, we love animal lovers. We are a big animal family here. So I love that story.
Oh, my whole family are such ardent animal people. They really are. One of the sad prices of my lifestyle is I can't have an animal right now. But boy, if you see me on the street, I will pet every cat, dog, llama, cow, horse, pony, whatever happens to be around me, iguana. I am going to enjoy that animal to bits because I love them.
I'm gonna call you the Snow White of Colombia. You just put your hands out and bring all the animal friends in.
Oh, wouldn't that be nice? But no, I love watching the birds outside my window here. But so far, they haven't landed in my palm yet.
Well, you gotta sing that magical tune. You just gotta like let out a little whistle.
Look, I can sing. Don't get me wrong, but I don't think I could hit that. No.
That's okay. We'll observe them for now. That's totally fine. Yeah.
Exactly.
But
But
that's
my grandmother taught me how to use my abilities. She helped me interpret auras, but also made it quite clear to me that the aura is only the table of contents, and you need to go beyond that and read the book. Now, I haven't read auras in uh, 32 years because in my 20s and teens, I thought it was cool. So anybody who wanted me to give them a reading, I was more than happy to do it. But I kept terrifying people. How do you know that? How could you know that? What's wrong with you? And it's like, I didn't want to do that anymore. Now, since my grandmother's passed, my abilities have grown exponentially. I now am a reluctant medium. I only will use my abilities in my work, but I'll help spirits pass over. I'll talk to them. They'll even talk back. Uh, but it's not for entertainment. My grandmother taught me that. It's a gift from God, and it should be used only for your work.
Absolutely. And it's funny because that was actually one of the questions on my list that I have here is, you know, I mean, this is my own personal belief, but I do truly feel like, I don't know if mediumship is the right word, but I feel like those spiritual abilities are definitely generational. You
Yes, they're
I
genetic.
Yeah, like I almost feel like in my own family, it's not something that's very talked about. And I think that's why just recently I was finally like, you know what? I was like, screw it. I'm starting this podcast and I need to just be who I am and I need to embrace it because for 28 years, I have, lived in that silent, isolated place, and it caused a lot of that frustration. And the only person who I think truly understood it was my grandma, because my family had the running joke of, she had eyes in the back of her head, and there was nothing I could get away with. Um,
Mm-hmm.
she was, she knew it. She just knew everything. And it was funny because before she passed away, she looked at my aunt and she said, "Oh, you're having a little girl." And she was not like coherent at that point. She had cancer. And me and my aunt kind of like looked at each other like, huh? And she didn't even know she was pregnant. And lo and behold, she did. She had a little girl. And so it was little moments like that. She would do things like that throughout my life, or she'd be like, who's this man that you're seeing? And who's this boy that you're seeing? And I'm like, how does she know? I'm like, we just started dating, so it was little things like that, but it was definitely passed down. My mom also very spiritual. I think that my goddaughter definitely has it, but it runs down that maternal line. So
Yep.
it kind of popped in my head and I was like, I wonder, if Chris had inherited any of that. Does your sister have any abilities, or you think
Not
it's
as far as I'm aware of, no.
okay?
Here's the thing about these abilities. It's not matrilineal. Um, it's based on emotional security and openness. And I've always been this guy. Uh, you know,
Which is a
so
good thing.
I'm very open. Uh, Anybody can ask me anything, and I'm always happy to talk to them. You know, most men are closed off. They're more practical, more logical thinking, and I'm not so much. And I'm more in touch with, I suppose, my feminine side, if you want. Um, Here's an unusual thing, actually. In my experience, and I've been doing this. August will be 43 years. Um, I realized not too long ago that the the majority of male psychics happen to be homosexual as well.
Really?
Yeah, and I have a theory that the reason they are is because they have to be more hyper vigilant, more
Okay.
attentive, as a survival skill, as a coping skill for them.
Yeah.
Um, I think for me, it was more I had been abused so much that my empathy was pushed out, and so I found that to be the way that it opened up for me.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, I know so many uh, gay male psychics. It's extraordinary to me. And the few of us that are not gay are a real rarity.
Okay. That's honestly, I never knew that, but that's really neat that you observed that.
Yeah, yeah.
Awesome. Okay. So how would you I kind of want to touch upon you talked about having those abilities and how it created isolation.
Mhm.
How did you come out of that? How did you deal with that? Was your grandmother a support system since she had the gift? It was
Not at
it
first.
okay.
No, my father was absolutely not just a skeptical, he was an active non-believer.
Okay.
For him, my grandparents were just, entertainers and con men.
Okay.
For my mother, she still hates the paranormal,
Yeah.
terrifies her. She wants nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
So she has no abilities because she just doesn't want to. Um, so when I started becoming truly terrified of the dark, instead of my grandmother stepping in and saying, "Well, Chris is hearing things," he's sensing what's there, and that's what's scaring him, and let's help him. Instead of that, because she wanted to get along with my parents, it was psychologists, social workers, psychiatrists, and I had to deal with that until I was 16, and my grandfather took me on my very first case.
Wow.
That was a baptism of fire. After that unbelievably extraordinary poltergeist night, and it really was. It was a Hollywood night. Um, I confronted my fears. I immersed myself in my fears, and I saw things that you would only ever see in a Hollywood movie. And after that, I went home and I went to bed for the first time in the dark, and I've never been afraid again.
Wow.
And it was then that I started talking to my grandmother and getting her guidance and learning, this is what you're seeing when you're seeing these colors, Chris, and this is what it means. And this is those whispers you're hearing when you're in your quiet moments. And that, yeah, that helped, but it took a long time.
Yeah.
And so I have a lot more empathy for everyone who's going through that, which is why I started this psychic support group online. You know, it's
Yeah.
important to me. I've been a therapist for a lot of my life too, in one way or another. And I realized after the first movie came out, we got to do something more because my grandmother is, you know, very old and very retired, and she can't do this anymore. And I can't do one on one. So we started the groups.
Wow. And then that's how it was born. So that's amazing. And that was 2014, correct? Was it?
When did the first movie come out?
I want to say,
I don't know.
yeah, I was like, I'm pretty sure. I think it was 2014. But yeah,
Look, I'm in Latin America. Time has a whole different way of being.
I feel like, see, for me, I feel like it was COVID that kind of threw a wrench in my like timeline. I feel like just those like 2 years kind of lost there has thrown me completely off track. Um,
I managed to travel quite a bit during COVID, which amazed me.
but honestly, it was probably for the best because, yeah, being
Yeah.
locked down is not.
Oh, I was in lockdown in Rio de Janeiro, in Scotland, in England. Here's an odd little anecdote. Um, when I had to fly to Costa Rica from London, I had to go down from Edinburgh in Scotland, and it was wintertime and it was snowing, and you, it was very hard to be allowed to take the train. I was on a train car all by myself,
Really?
all by myself. The entire, I don't know if it
Must
was
have
eight
felt
hours
so
train.
odd. I feel
It
like
was.
that would feel odd.
I didn't even see a trainman come through. Nobody. I just had the whole place to myself. It was heavenly. I mean, I felt like, a railroad tycoon. It was fantastic.
I was gonna say VIP, right?
Yeah, yeah, it was amazing.
But yeah, I mean, so I was gonna what was I gonna say before? Oh, I was gonna so with the whole isolation thing, I know you said that you had faced your fears and everything, and you went on your first case. What was kind of going through your head in that period of time?
Which period? You mean that first night on
Yeah,
that
like
case? I
that
was
first
scared. I was scared I was going to crap my pants. Uh,
case.
I
It's
mean, it was terrible. It was terrifying. The woman and the man were waiting outside the house. They were terrified to go in. It was a tiny little tract home. Downstairs was just the living room and the kitchen. The refrigerator had been removed, as well as most of the other heavy furniture, because things were flying around the house. Um, there was just a stove, some counters, and recliner and a couch downstairs.
wow.
Upstairs, there was still the bedding in 3 bedrooms, but the whole house was shaking from pounding on the walls in repetitions of 3. I mean, it was amazing, deafeningly loud. And there was clawing inside the walls and growling coming from the walls. And I got to the top of the stairs and I look in the bathroom and the crucifix is upside down, like right out of Hollywood. And my grandfather made me sit in the master bedroom where the woman had been attacked in the dark while they went downstairs to use Holy Church incense to stir things up,
Wow.
and said, "Just let us know if anything happens, Chris."
Yeah, no big deal.
You sadist!
It's my first night on the job, and
And I didn't want to be there. I'm like, I'm gonna go because my grandpa told me to go. Um, so yeah, I did that for an hour in the dark. After that, we were on a radio show, WTIC AM Radio 1060 with Brian Dow. Um, no 7 second delay or whatever it is, was completely live. And we were on the phone. And the husband and another researcher, Paul Bartz, were upstairs. We were downstairs. My grandfather and the lady were on the couch. I was in the recliner with that same cross that had been upside down in my hand and the phone in the other hand. And I'm like, under my breath, by the power of Jesus Christ, I command you to be gone. By the power of Jesus Christ, I command you to be gone. And then it's like 3:15 in the morning. These 2 hulking black shapes come down the stairs in the dark, and you could still see them.
There's
And the
definitely a
woman's,
difference in
huh?
like there's definitely a difference. Like I know exactly what you're saying because I've seen it
Natural
before.
dark versus preternatural dark.
Yes, it is the blackest black I think you have ever laid eyes on.
Yep.
And it's funny because I would say that to my friends, and only very few couple of them know, and they would be like, "Well, like how? Like I don't understand." They're like, "How do you see them in the dark if they're dark?" And I'm like, "It's dark."
It's black hole dark.
Yeah.
The absolute absence of light.
Yes.
But the woman then screamed that her face was on fire. And my grandfather flashed the flashlight on her face, and 3 claw marks appeared on the left side of her face and blood dripping down. Then that pot with Holy Church incense in it came flying out of the kitchen, around the corner, and straight at my head, just missing me. The hit the window behind me. The shade flew up. The pot crumpled, and the window didn't break. Impossible. I said something that I probably am not allowed to say here right now, over the air, just like I probably shouldn't have been allowed to say it on the air. But I was shocked. Uh,
We're F word friendly here, so if
oh,
you
I said, oh shit,
yeah, okay. So that's that's not as, not as bad as the F word, but I mean, I would probably say the same thing, probably worse.
and the woman screaming she wants out of the house. I sorry, or are we good?
Huh?
Good. You can't hear it. The lights start going on and off. I'm running to the door thinking, this is a good idea. Let's get out. And the door is locked. We can't get out. The recliner I had just been sitting in tumbles across the room at me. And then the door opens by itself. And that was my first night on the case. We left my grandfather sitting there in the dark by himself.
Oh my gosh. So like when you said you immersed yourself in your fears, I mean you immersed is I don't even think that's a strong enough word to
Well, you
capture.
got to understand, my grandfather tried to join the Marines in World War II when he was 16. His father found out and pulled him right out of the recruiting office. But when he was 17, he went to war in the Navy. And I think he just saw me struggling with all my fears. And he said, he needs a baptism of fire.
Yeah.
This is the one.
That good old, if you can't swim, we're just gonna throw you in the lake and it's
Yeah, my other grandfather did that to me.
Sink or swim. It's
Yeah.
funny because my grandparents raised me, so I know very well kind of what you're talking about. I was raised by a Vietnam veteran. My grandma was very much that old school, just tough, and you just gotta live through it to learn it. So that's yeah.
Yeah.
But that's amazing that it helped you.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
I mean, after witnessing that, so I guess I kind of also want to get your perspective on life after death. So,
Sure.
what is your philosophy on life after death? How do you
Well,
view
let's start with the purpose of death first.
that? Okay.
You know, we often, I can't tell you the number of people who contact me all the time struggling with grief because they've just lost someone. They no longer believe in God because they've lost someone. Like, death is inevitable, it will happen. And you have to understand there's a purpose to death. When my son was 8 years old, I was engaged to a wonderful woman. And so now we're going back 15 years. And she had cancer and she died. And we had some problems near the end because I wanted to care for her and she wanted to be with her mother. At that point, I was also struggling because I was handicapped and could barely take care of myself. Um, but after she died, she visited me twice. And the second time, I woke up in our bedroom and I could hear her heavy footsteps coming down the hallway. She was a big woman. And when I opened my eyes, even though it was a pitch black room, there was a mirror on the bedroom door. And I could see us, her reflection, right behind me in bed, propped up on one elbow, looking down on me with a smile on her face. Look, what I'm about to say doesn't make a lot of sense, but I closed my eyes because I didn't want to see her leave again.
Makes
And
sense.
she got right in front of my face. And very deliberately, she said, I love you. And then she kissed me on the lips. I mean, we're not talking, ooh, psychically, I could tell she kissed me. No. I mean, the woman kissed me. She needed me to understand that even though we had not really been together, she loved me with all her heart. And after that, she was gone.
Wow.
I have had more experiences with people from my past coming back than I can bother to recount, honestly. Um, and what it has taught me, and don't get me wrong, I grieved. Oh, God, I grieved. I grieved for years. But that also was an important lesson. You know, it taught me about how important death is. It taught me it gives immediacy to life, that it teaches us to love now without reservation because regret sucks. If we all lived forever, regardless of anything we do, then that person who's suffering on the street right now, why not just ignore him? He'll be fine in a billion years.
Yeah.
You know, it's a meaningless thing then.
Yeah.
So death gives purpose to life. It gives meaning to life.
Absolutely.
And it is a profound message. Even if you fail once with one loved one, that's the lesson to teach you to not fail again with all of the other people in your life. Don't
Absolutely.
lose your faith because you lose a person.
Yeah.
Faith isn't thinking that everything's going to be okay if I pray. That's a silly little fantasy. And if
Yeah.
you lose your faith when tragedy hits, then you never had any faith. All you ever had was a comforting daydream.
Yeah.
Faith is knowing that regardless of what you go through, your soul is going to be fine. That's it right there. That's faith. You know, regardless, look, every single thing you go through impacts other people. If I were taken away right now by a serial killer and never seen again, nobody would know that I was taken by a serial killer. He could torture me for the next year and a half before he kills me in the most horrific way possible. My disappearance would impact many, many people. That suffering I go through would impact my killer. It will also impact me. It has purpose. I am not saying we should accept evil. Evil is there to fight against. It's there to overcome. You know, when we die, and look, I can only tell you what I know. For earthbound spirits, for those who either don't want to pass over because they're afraid, for instance, a lot of people who are Christian and they commit suicide. Can you imagine what it must be like for them when they realize I'm still here after they've killed themselves? They thought this was the end, and now they've got to see the suffering of others, and they're afraid to pass over because they think they're going to go to hell. And we help them. I help them. Many of my people help them in kind of a therapy kind of way to accept that they're going to be fine and it's okay to let go and to pass over. Some refuse to accept that they're dead. People, I mean, in general. And again, they're very either confused, they die with a high fever, or they're just obstinate and they can't believe they actually died. And they're like, who are these dumb people in my home? I'm going to cause a lot of trouble and try to push them out. They're not evil, they're just confused. Most spirits are confused. Having said that, once a spirit passes over, or if a spirit consciously chooses to stay, and by spirit, I mean a person,
Yeah.
um, that's a different thing. Those are people who are completely self aware, they know what's happened to them, and they're making a conscious choice. You can pass over the other side and still come back. Happens all the time. Family gatherings, holidays, funerals, births, weddings, you name it. Anytime we are remembering our loved ones, we are sending out a message to the universe and they can hear it. It's the law of recognition, and we bring them to us. So it happens all the time.
That
You may
makes me
not be
feel
aware.
so good to hear. It really does. Because again, kind of going back to the isolation thing, I think I've always had a very different view, especially at a young age. I feel like I've always had a very different outlook on things than maybe my younger friends did. And I remember a particular moment. My mother's best friend, she did commit suicide. And my mom obviously came home and she delivered the news to me. And I was heartbroken because she was, she was part of the family at that point. And when that happened, my friends would be like, "Oh, what's wrong with you?" And at that age, you kind of just, I think, are a little bit more honest than you need to be. And I told them what's going on. They're like, "Oh, she's gonna go to hell," and like that was their response. And I remember like saying to them, I'm like, no, she's not. And they were like, yes, she is. And it was one of those things where even into adulthood, people still have that stigma that just because you choose to end your own life, that that's where you're going to end up. And I feel like that's so terrible, but it's
Yeah.
such a comforting thing to hear and a validating thing to hear you say that, because, you know, I've always felt that way, but I feel like I've never actually gotten that confirmation or heard anybody say that. And so it's like, you know, you always have it in, like, I guess I always had it in the back of my head, like, I wonder what really does happen. And it's like, I feel like I always knew better, but there's these little pieces of doubt that creep in when you're
Yeah.
constantly hearing it. So, I mean, that's awesome that you are able to help souls do that, especially when, you know, they're stuck.
I've only recently started embracing the mediumship side of my life, maybe 7 or 8 years ago. So I've only dealt with suicides 3 times. One was a message to the mother that no, this wasn't really suicide. I overdosed. And it was an accident. Don't worry, mom. Another was a suicide of an American former serviceman in Costa Rica. And it took a while, but I was able to help him pass over as well. Uh, who's the other one? I apologize. I've had thousands of cases, and right
No, no,
now,
it's to be expected.
yeah, it was in my head just a moment ago, and now, honest to God, I can't remember. That's a shame. I apologize.
No, 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 you're fine. Listen, you're talking to a mom of a 2-year-old who is totally filled with mom brain. So my thoughts are constantly fleeting. But I mean, I guess another thing that I was curious about is there's a lot of talk about reincarnation.
Hmm.
So what are your views on that? Like how have you had experiences with reincarnation? Do you have a story? You know,
Oh, few. Um, here's a little thing. My grandparents, being Catholic, you would think, oh no, they won't believe in reincarnation. Nope. My grandfather taught me regression hypnosis when I was 16.
really?
Uh, yeah, he hypnotized me first, and I started to remember my last lifetime, and I have plenty of memories because they kept coming to me afterward. Um, I wasn't extraordinary, you know. In any of my lifetimes that I recall, there's a dumb story out there that I'm the reincarnation of somebody rather extraordinary, but I certainly don't remember it, and I doubt it's true. There are very few extraordinary individuals in history. Most of us are just living. But in my last lifetime, I fought in World War One. I remember the mustard gas rolling down the hill at night and my struggling with my gas mask. I remember my friend with me, who we both returned to the heartland of the United States in the Midwest. We both married sisters. Um, I started General Store. He started a farm. Eventually, at some point in the 50s, I was a sheriff's deputy in Texas. And during a routine traffic stop, I was murdered. Yeah, nothing spectacular, just a life.
It's just very like that's just I just think that's extraordinary to me. Like I just think that that's so neat to be able to recount, you know, past lives, and it's something that's always interested me. So, you know,
There's a huge amount of evidence out there for it, a huge amount. Um, and billions believe in reincarnation. Even Jesus, if you read between the lines, kind of talks about it. Um, so yeah, I am a firm believer. I believe I was also a Chinese slave who was shipped to South Africa. Now I had no idea. that even existed. But I did some research, and yeah, lo and behold, Chinese, poor Chinese were shipped to South Africa as slaves to work there. Um, yeah.
Wow. And so another kind of, I guess it's like fact or fiction, and I'll see if maybe you can answer it. I always heard about birthmarks being kind of a telltale sign of maybe how you died or wounds. Do you have any insight to that?
No, I've heard that, and I've even heard of certain people who had memories, and this is their gunshots that they had, and then it turns out historically to be accurate. But you know, you have enough people with enough stories, and there are birthmarks on most of us somewhere, you
Yeah.
know. So I don't know. I don't know, and this might surprise people, but I'm actually the biggest skeptic in the world.
Really?
Oh God, yes.
And
I
that's
won't
funny because that's
believe
another one of my questions.
I won't believe anything without evidence.
Okay.
I don't. I look, I'm a psychic who doesn't believe in psychics.
Okay.
My grandmother being one of the best, she still wasn't 100%. Nobody is 100%. And if you only go by psychic impressions, you're going to screw it up, and you're going to screw up a family.
Yeah.
So, no. When people come to us, we're looking for the natural over the supernatural always. Number one, in reality, there is an underlying reason why someone is more prone to paranormal activity. And we have to find that reason. And, my grandparents would say Ouija board. Okay, fine. But millions of people use Ouija boards. Can we please go beyond that simplistic explanation? And what is the underlying condition that makes you vulnerable and not the other 8 people that were around playing with the Ouija board that night? And that could be, drug abuse, domestic violence, past traumas, just being incredibly open teenager, and everything is brand new and exciting, and all those emotions are, boiling up, and you've got so much energy and you can manifest something. You know, I don't believe in demons.
Okay.
I'm an exorcist who does not believe in demons.
See, and that's very interesting because I was going to ask you kind of next your view on Ouija boards because it's such a hot topic. And I know growing up in my household, the one time that I ever saw my grandmother get very scary stern was when me and my cousin for her sweet 16 we were talking about like, oh, we should do a Ouija board. And well, not me, her and her friends were talking about it, and I was kind of like, I was always taught not to bring one of those in the house. And so I asked my grandma, I was like, would it be okay if I did this at the sleepover? And she was like, if you ever bring a Ouija board in this house, if you ever do a Ouija board in this house, if you ever touch one, she's like, you and the Ouija board will be outside on the lawn. And so, it's something, she had a bad experience with one. And
But
so I
it's not the board.
Yeah, so I think, you saying that makes sense because if she was spiritually vulnerable, that would make sense why.
It's your intention that's important. I don't care if you're doing automatic writing seances, Ouija boards, pendulums, tarot cards. If your intention is to communicate with a spirit and you use a ritual to focus your intention, which a Ouija board requires ritual, then you are going to be able to open a door. Now, Ouija boards can be more effective in doing that, unfortunately, because whereas a pendulum can be used just for divination of a whole different sort, and the same thing with automatic writing, communicating with your subconscious, or tarot cards using as a mediating tool for your psychic abilities. A Ouija board's intention is communicate with spirits. It's focused on that alone. And if you are foolish enough to create your own Ouija board. And if you are extraordinarily stupid enough to, for instance, use your own blood to do it, then you are putting so much of your personal energy into it that it can truly be very dangerous.
Okay. Um, Another thing that I have heard about, and this is also coming from a personal experience, was people talk a lot about mirrors. Um,
Yeah, I've heard that many times.
yeah, so like I think just again growing up in a spiritual household, and just superstition and things like that, I always make sure that like I never have two mirrors facing each other. I don't like mirrors across from my bed. So like that kind of thing. So I kind of was just curious, is like, is have you guys ever found in
Plenty of my people would tell you that mirrors make very good portals.
okay.
I have an open mind about it, but I will by no means give you a definitive answer because I have none.
Okay. Fair enough. That's fair enough.
I don't know. I really don't. Anybody who tells you they're an expert in the paranormal is either an egotistical prat, lying to themselves, or lying to you.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not. I am a student. And what I've learned was that when I was 20, I was an expert.
As
Uh,
most of us are at 20, right?
by the time I was, by the time I was 22, my grandfather says, "Chris, you're a demonologist," and I put that right on my business card. And by the time I was 26, I said, "I am definitely not a demonologist," and I got rid of that. I think that particular title is absurd. I don't like it. If somebody tries to join the foundation and they're telling me they're demonologist, I'm going to have an awful lot of questions for that person.
Okay.
What is demonology? Oh, well, I've studied demons. Really? How?
Yeah.
Well, I studied the Bible and I studied, the Solomonic keys and the, uh-huh. Anything else? Well, no, that's enough. No, it isn't. You have to study every culture because they manifest differently according to our cultural and spiritual beliefs around the world. They are not these demonized ancient Sumerian and Babylonian gods that we have now turned into demons.
Yeah.
That is not correct. They are not fallen angels. They do not have the wisdom of the ages. Can they display some intelligence? Absolutely. But I think that they are manifestations of our own thoughts and energy, and they take on a spiritual life of their own, and they can cause devastating harm. They can kill.
Okay.
But I think they are an extension of us.
That's different. I've never heard that. So that's a different way to look at it. Okay.
It's called an egregore, a tulpa, or a thought form. You can look them
Okay.
all up.
Yeah.
Tulpa, Tulpa, is a Tibetan Buddhist term for these thought forms. The monks in Tibet, the really good ones, can manifest a thought form physically. Like, for instance, a tiger in the hallway of the monastery to make the noisy novices shut up, and then it dissipates. An egregore is another way of talking about it. It's created by witches normally when it's done intentionally.
Okay.
And if they are not given a specific task, if they are not given a deadline and basically a due by date where they dissipate, they can take on more of a life of their own and get out of hand. And then you get something like the poltergeist phenomenon.
Okay.
Often, poltergeist phenomena can be out of control psychic abilities from somebody in the household.
Okay. I mean, that's very intriguing. Because I've never heard that before. So that definitely is like opening my mind to a lot of stuff because just like anybody else, I'm a horror movie junkie. I Halloween is my favorite time of the year. like ironically, because, you know, like I said, I am still afraid of the dark at 28. And I think that's why I haven't been able to get past that certain threshold with my abilities, is because of, like you said, fear. Um, and
Fear will hold you back.
yes, and so it's like my whole life I've had this image painted, whether it be from cinema or listening to, you know, obviously, like I do have a sense of skepticism with some of these ghost shows, and but they're
Oh
fun.
God, they're terrible.
Yeah,
All of
they're
them. Every one of them is awful.
I'm like, that doesn't, I don't think that's how that works. And I'm like, okay. But, you know, I feel like sometimes they're just fun to watch, you know, to spook yourself out. And so it's, but at the same time, it's like, I feel like subconsciously, um, I have this picture now of like, I just thought it was angels and demons and
No, it's so
spirits.
much more complicated.
Yeah, yeah. And I started to delve into myself other podcasts and listen to some other speakers, and I did come across one where they were talking about, I don't really even know how to word this, I guess, summoning demons and saying that demons aren't bad, and they're just like you said, these ancient wise like gods and goddesses. And so I would just was
It depends on the culture and the religion you're talking about. The word demon, actually started in Greece, ancient Greece,
okay.
and it was a mediator between gods and humans, a messenger of God between the gods to humans. It wasn't an evil entity. Um, it's only later that we start to see them become something else. Even, for instance, Lucifer. Lucifer was actually a living human king, like 4,000 years ago. It wasn't Satan. And even if you look at the story of Satan, look at the book of Job, for instance.
Yeah.
First off, everybody thinks that it's Satan in the Garden of Eden. It's the serpent. It's never called the devil or this or Satan.
Yeah.
If you go far back enough in time, it wasn't even Satan. It was the Satan, which meant spiritual prosecutor.
Right.
And that was a position held to teach or test your faith. Um, if you look at the book of Job, in the first scene, Satan walks into the throne room of heaven, comes right, the prince of heaven, walks up to God and says, "So I hear you got this guy named Job, who's your biggest, most faithful follower. I want to test his faith." And God says, "Go right ahead. Just don't kill him. Kill everybody else if you want. Just don't kill him." And that's what he does. Even if you look at the story of Jesus in the wilderness for 40 days and 40 nights, the purpose of the Satan character is to test Jesus's faith, to prepare him for what he's about to go through.
Wow.
And I think if you really look at the horrifying things that we do see in my work, I think if you believe that everything is part of God, then even those horrifying things have a purpose. They may not know that. If they have any life of their own, if they have any true intelligence, and again, what I have found is repetitive behaviors based on culture, not actual intelligence more often than not. And even when it is, it's limited. You know, I can't tell you the number of times I've been attacked, and it's always the same stuff. It's like, really, guys? It didn't work the other 30 times. Why are you bothering? You know, that is not the wisdom of the ages. You know?
Yeah, yeah.
So they have a purpose to help strengthen our faith, bring us closer to God. Uh, so I do think there's something there. It's not what we think it is.
Okay. Okay. That's, I mean, my brain right now is I'm mind blown, and I'm like absorbing this because this is definitely a new chapter for me. This is a different way of looking at it.
And we should always have different perspectives. We should always look for new ways to look at things.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So some of the, and I know we kind of touched upon it at the beginning. I know we said, some of the movies that have come out, right, and the representation of cases. How accurate is that? I would assume probably not very accurate because it's cinema. And how do you feel about that? Because you live it every day. So
Well, the movie The Exorcist is a pretty good representation of reality. Although I met one of the three actual exorcists from the case that it's loosely based on. No priest actually died, and he was an amazingly wonderful man. Um, the Conjuring movies are based on real cases. The details are not real. Maybe the first one's pretty good. I don't know because my grandparents never spoke about that case ever, ever. It was not one of their landmark cases. The only reason that movie was made is because Andrea Perrin wrote 3 books on it, and so yeah, it became a movie. The Annabelle movies are absolute fantasies. They have nothing to do with reality. Nothing, not one iota. Um, the Nun doesn't exist.
yeah.
Uh, you know, there's only one thing in the movie The Nun that is true, and that's in the credits at the end of the movie, where they show the some of the exorcism of Maurice Theriault. I was there. That was
Really.
where my grandfather had his first heart attack, and I was the man standing between Maurice and the Archbishop throughout the exorcism.
Oh my gosh.
So
And
that was real. That was real. But there was no Frenchie in France or wherever the hell he was in the movie, and there is no nun. Uh, that's that is a James Wan invention, who
well,
is a brilliant man
is
and very
whew,
respectful of my
that nun's pretty
grandparents.
scary.
Yeah, no, it's not real. Even the books, the demonologist leans heavily into the fear aspect, and I don't care for that, but the stories are right. Uh, Devil in Connecticut, again, a well-written book. But the others, I'm in the first edition of 3 of their books.
Okay.
And let's see, The Haunted, that's about the West Pittston, Pennsylvania, the Schmerls case. I was in college during that one. I was there, I don't know, 4 weekends maybe, because Pennsylvania, and I was in UConn at the time, University of Connecticut. But then, of course, Satan's Harvest with Maurice. I was there a lot. And then In a Dark Place, which is the movie The Haunting in Connecticut.
That was
That
the
book,
Snedeker family, right? Is that how
that the
you say it?
Snedeker family, that book is absolute garbage.
Okay.
And the author blames my grandfather, but the truth is, I gave that author hour by hour, moment by moment notes of my 9.5 weeks in that house while helping that family. And I was there every single night but one.
That was really the one case that I will say I kind of wanted to ask you about because, contrary to popular belief, I did ask some of my listeners to submit questions for you, and a lot of them are going to have, your typical, well, what did you think of The Conjuring? And, a lot of Lorraine and yeah.
I hated number 2. I and my favorite part of number 3 is the last scene because it was
okay.
most realistic. Where my grandmother always wanted a gazebo, always, and my grandfather surprised her with one in the backyard. When I saw that, I cried.
Oh, they had such a great love story. They
Yeah,
really,
that was a nice touch that they added that. That made me feel happy.
I love that though. Like their love story is something else. I
Yeah,
just
but the movies don't portray it. Not really.
no.
That's movie stuff. That's movie stuff. Don't. My grandmother was unbelievably devoted to my grandfather, and he loved her completely. But like, he had a Type A kind of personality, really, and he'd be like, "Come on, Lorraine, let's get going," and she just ignored him. Okay, honey, whatever you say, and then just go on doing whatever she wanted for another hour. Uh, their dynamic was different. But when it came to the work, they were very dedicated.
And that's, um, what I was going to say before is one of my very first paranormal experiences was growing up. I remember very vividly when the show A Haunting came out. And
Yes.
I remember the first one I ever watched was A Haunting in Connecticut.
That was the very first episode. It was a 2-hour episode. You could still, well, last I saw, it was still on YouTube. At that point, I did not like publicity. I had pulled my name from the books, from later editions. I'm only in the first editions.
Okay.
Um, so I wouldn't cooperate with the production. So I'm not in it at all. Uh, but I watched it, and that actually was really well done.
I always reference back to that because I said, oops, sorry. I did say to my husband was, we were talking about it the other day, and I said, do you ever remember like the original A Haunting, not all like the new ones and the little short, I said, but the original ones, because I remember sitting on my living room floor in my grandparents' house, and I was begging my grandma, I'm like, please, like, I want to watch it. She's like, I feel, she's like, you're already afraid of the dark. Like, I don't know if you should watch that. And I'm like, no, trust me, I got this. And so I sat there and I just soaked up every bit of it. And I was just like, to live in a house like that and to move into, I feel like it's the typical, you move into a home, it's going to solve all your problems. It's supposed to be this grand solution. And then to
Well,
go and
the
find
son
out,
had leukemia, and they were trying to get to Yukon Medical Center, so it
yeah.
wasn't a solution of anything really.
But more so being close to, like, I feel like every family, when you hear these stories, a lot of the times, whether it's a financial issue or in his case a medical issue, this was going to be their, we're not going to have to struggle as much because we're going to be closer. This house is supposed to
Right.
be a new chapter. And so, when I am watching it, I remember being like, I don't know what I would do if I moved into a home and found what they did in the basement. And
The truth is, most people don't have the financial wherewithal to get out of that situation at first. It takes time. Hey, Morgan, I apologize, but I don't have too much longer because
okay.
I have a board meeting.
Yeah, yeah, no, no, no problem.
But if I could tell your listeners that if they need help, please go to warrenlegacyfoundation.com. There's a contact us link. You can go there. There's a Google form to fill out to either join us or to ask for help. All of our services are free, every one of them. Whatever we offer is always free, and always anonymous. We're very protective of our people. Very. Now, if you want to join us, you better have a lot of experience and very good head on your shoulders, and you better not be in this for ego. Otherwise, do not come to us. If you're trying to use our name to promote yourself, don't waste your time. You will not get in. We only take the best. In the future, do we want to educate the next generation? Absolutely. But right now, we don't have the manpower. We only have over 100 people in the foundation around the world, and we're stretched thin. So we're working on growing the best. If you want to learn more about, well, all the stuff we talked about tonight, as well as cases and things like that, our YouTube channel is called The Warren Files. Careful, there are an awful lot of imitators out there called Warren Files, but you'll find us. It's got our the Warren Legacy Foundation logo on the channel, and you will not get bullcrap. You will get the truth. Everything from how to protect yourself psychically to different technology and how to use it and which ones are bull crap. And I don't use tech, but I do have great experts who do. So it's not just me. We are a foundation. Our strength is built on our diversity. We help all religions. We accept all religion. You are out here to help. I don't care if you're a witch or what you are, and we've got plenty of witches and pagans in the foundation as well. Um, that doesn't matter to me. Hell, we have an Umbanda priestess. Um, we are here to help, period. If the family we serve doesn't have faith in what we're doing, it ain't going to work. So we have to work with their faiths, just like my grandparents did.
Absolutely.
You know, somebody sent me an attacking text that my grandparents are racist. My grandparents only believed in Catholicism and hated other religions. I'm like, they worked with Shinto priests. I vividly recall being 5 years old, and a Black African priest flew over to meet my grandparents, and they were so honored. And they brought him over to the house to meet me, and I got to spend time with him as well. And no, there's a lot of crap out there that's incorrect. Hell, you know, there are certain places you can go online. They will tell you my mother never had any. My mother never had any children. She had 2 children, 4 grandchildren, and a great grandchild.
Can't
I
believe
was,
everything on the internet.
oh, you know, the wild thing is, I either get attacked for not being their grandson, being their grandson, or just feeding off of the shadow of being in their of famous people. It's like, no, I've been doing this forever. It's just what I do. I'm just trying to help people. I don't let it get to me. To me, I feel sad for people who are so filled with anger and hate that for them, that's entertainment. You know, attacking others. It's like, look, Google my grandmother's obituary. You'll get the full list of the family members. You know, if that's what it takes to believe I am who I am, please do. I invite you to.
But I mean, you're very clearly, and I think it shows. And like I said, just even from our little voice exchange that we were doing to coordinate this, I mean, you can genuinely tell when somebody is full of love and light. And you do truly, when you talk about your grandparents, when you talk about the foundation and all the help that you get, that you give, I'm sorry, it comes from you can tell it comes from a very passionate, very genuine place. And I just, you radiate goodness, you do. And I'm not just saying that, but like when you can tell when a person talks about something, that it means something to them and that they genuinely want to put good out into the world. So
Yeah, in high school, I struggled, middle school especially, but in high school, I struggled until I moved to a new school. And I discovered that by listening to other people, I became liked. By helping them with their problems, I became liked. I don't believe in altruism. I really don't. I don't think it exists. If I choose to die for someone, it's because I can't live with the thought of not having done that. That's not altruism. You know, I do this because it fulfills me. And I have helped people my entire life, from being Santa Claus to child abuse investigator and therapist to caseworker in welfare or Peace Corps volunteer or teaching overseas. My whole focus in life has been on helping others because it does make me feel good.
yeah.
So it's not altruism. It's fulfilling for me. I'm not full of love and light. I'm just full of something.
Well, I've definitely I've enjoyed your company. It's like I said, it's a breath of fresh air. I feel like just talking to you, like I've known you for years, which like sometimes I can be socially awkward and uncomfortable. So it's nice to be able to talk to somebody and just, not have that awkwardness. And you're very humble and just kind. And so I really appreciate that.
Well, I know my origins. I'm not humble. I'm just realistic.
Yeah, yes, you did say that. You did say that.
Uh,
um
Anybody who's actually been in my life long enough knows, man, I have fallen through the cracks so many times. Uh, the fact that I'm standing at all is pretty damned amazing.
But you're here and you're resilient and you're making changes in the world. So I think that that's what matters, you know. And I think that that's really that right there. I feel like is God's work when you're making it when you're leaving the world a little bit better than it was the day before.
I'm only a tool. It's his hand. If something good comes out of it, it's his. If something gets screwed up, that's mine.
Well, the one thing I will ask you, well, two things really quick before you go. Um, One thing is if you could give one piece of advice to our listeners, what would that be?
Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid of life. Don't be afraid of pain. Don't be afraid of the other. You know, especially in the United States today, I see everybody torn apart and everybody hates the other side, the other side. But you know what? Almost all of us are in the middle. We have our differences, but those differences are only exacerbated by people who are trying to consolidate their own power. We have far more in common than what separates us. And I don't care if you are a poor farmer in Mali or you are a high powered CEO in New York City. In the eyes of God, you're just another ant. So be humble, care about one another, because without one another, the anthill collapses.
That's very profound. I like that. Thank you for, coming on with us today. I did want to, my second question, was about, I think it's called Warren Con.
Oh yeah, that's something that
Okay.
my mother's husband does.
Okay, okay. So I wasn't sure if that was your domain.
No, not at
Okay.
all.
So strictly the foundation. Um,
The foundation and Nesper are separate. My grandmother and I wanted them to be together.
okay.
Uh, I was supposed to be the international arm of
Okay.
Nesper, but well, Tony had other ideas, and his is more entertainment based. His is more, uh, you know, his thing, and that's fine. That's not us. Our job is to serve others.
Okay. Awesome. So, to all of our listeners, if you want to just give them that website one more time, if
Sure.
anybody else,
WarrenLegacyFoundation.com, simplest thing in the world.
perfect.
Barger Foundation.
Yes, and if you,
Oh,
obviously,
and you can find us. The best way to find me is on Facebook.
okay,
I am not a social media guy. Yes, we have Instagram and all these other things that I can't even remember the names of. Um, but I don't run them. Uh, you'll find me personally on Facebook. So it's a good place. If you just have a question you want to ask me, I'm very open, more than happy to help you if I can.
absolutely. And I'll make sure that I also post those links when I share this to social media. Because I truly believe in the Warren Foundation. I think it's just wonderful that you guys are able to help people, especially with things that they may not understand or know. So,
Thank
um,
you. God bless you.
absolutely. Just thank you so much for coming on today. And I hope this is only a part one. I hope that we get to have you on here more because I could soak up every you're telling me. I've learned so much today. So it
I'm happy to come back. I really am.
yes.
And you can have, I've already spoken to some of my members. They're overjoyed to help you and to come on, just say when and I'll create a group so you can start to get to know them as well. They're
Awesome.
very good people. Honestly, the foundation is the people. It's not me. I'm just one person among over 100.
Takes a village, right?
Exactly.
So we'll definitely have to stay in touch and we will we'll get together soon hopefully. And again, just thank you so much for coming on here and really just educating our listeners and giving them a glimmer inside, life after death, and just some great perspectives, some new perspectives. So I think that that'll be very valued.
Thank you. Thank you.
Have fun
I
at your
hope
meeting and enjoy that view for me, because I'm going to live vicariously through you until I can do it.
I love it here. Colombia is the place. Let me tell you, favorite place on earth, and I've lived in over 90. This is it right here, and the town of Jardín de Antioquia. There, I mean, llamas, cows, and burros are my neighbors. It's heaven here.
Well, if you end up planning routes, maybe it'll give me a reason to vacation. I'll have to fly down and you can show me around a little bit, because I've never been, but you sold me on when you showed me your window.
Honestly, Morgan, for some weird reason, flying to Colombia is incredibly cheap.
Really?
I don't know where you are, but depending on what city you're flying out of, it's like 200 round trip or somewhere around there.
Oh, that's not bad at all. I'm in Delaware, so yeah, good old
Yeah,
Delaware.
you go to Baltimore, fly out of Baltimore, go out of New York, and it'll be next to nothing. You'll be amazed.
Okay.
And I oh my God, the food here. I have. How much does it cost you for an iced coffee? Just out of curiosity.
Lord, it depends on where you go, but we'll go by Starbucks standards. I mean, way too much, like 4.05, $5.
Okay. Yesterday, I went out for my Father's Day breakfast,
Happy
and
Father's Day, by the way.
thank you. And I got their version of eggs Benedict, which came on an almond croissant.
Ooh,
It was unbelievably delicious, and it was less than $4.
really?
Oh, not to mention the fresh tropical juices you can get here of every sort you've never heard of. Lula, maracuja, fresa, mora. Oh God, oh.
It just the words sound tasty. I'm like, you have my mouth salivating. You jogged my memory, because I was going to ask you before, how is the coffee? Because like I am a coffee person.
Terrible, 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 terrible. I, I love coffee, but Colombia exports all their good coffee.
Okay.
Um, we actually have a chain here. They have Starbucks, of course, like everywhere in the world. But Juan Valdez is a major chain here.
Okay.
Um, the cappuccinos are great. The frozen coffees are great, but regular old coffee is not that good
Oh,
unless you get
darn.
Cafe Amor. Cafe Amor is a really good one. I will say that.
Okay. So definitely the food though, but that's okay, because I'm
Anyway,
a foodie.
guys, I really okay. Anyway, thank you very much.
Yes, yes. Thank you again. And I hope you have a great night, and we'll talk soon.
Great. I'm looking forward to it. Bye bye.
Bye.